I never imagined that living on the orbital colony Zenthra would teach me more about alien life than any diplomatic mission or research assignment could. The station was home to hundreds of species, each carefully segregated and regulated by interstellar protocols. I had requested a human-alien roommate arrangement as part of an immersive cultural exchange program, partly for research, partly for curiosity. And that's how I ended up sharing quarters with Lyria, a native of the aquatic planet Thalria. Lyria was unique even among her species. Thalrians were known for their bioluminescent skin and water-adapted physiology, but Lyria had adapted remarkably well to dry environments. She moved with grace, spoke in a melodic cadence, and carried herself with a subtle aura of authority that made it clear she was used to attention. She was also notoriously private, a fact I quickly discovered. Our first weeks together were strictly formal. I respected her boundaries. She respected mine. We shared meals, coordinated schedules, and occasionally exchanged observations about the station's operations. She was fascinating, methodical, and infinitely patient, but always slightly out of reach, as though she existed on a plane of awareness I could only glimpse from a distance. I had never seen her in a state of complete vulnerability, nor had I imagined I would. That, however, changed one afternoon in the most mundane and chaotic way possible. I had returned early from my shift in the research wing, exhausted and preoccupied with calibrating the station's water reclamation system. My mind was elsewhere, cataloging variables and error margins, when I made the mistake of heading down the wrong corridor. My attention was entirely on the interface console in my hand. The door I entered was not just any room. It was our shared quarters. But I didn't notice the lights reflecting off the frosted glass door to the bathing chamber. And then, without warning, the door slid open. There she was, Lyria, bathing. I froze, caught between horror and disbelief. Her body was unlike anything I had expected from descriptions, from previous glimpses during mandatory orientation. Her skin shifted in subtle waves of bioluminescence, colors flowing like liquid light along contours that defied human anatomy. Limbs elongated slightly, flexible in ways that suggested both strength and fluidity. Even her hair, if it could be called hair, was a cascade of translucent filaments that floated as if suspended in water, moving in sync with her breathing. It was beautiful. It was alien. It was completely disarming. I stumbled backward, my foot catching on the edge of the bath mat. "I am so sorry," I yelled, voice cracking. My brain scrambled for protocols, apologies, and excuses. "I didn't mean..." Lyria's eyes, deep pools of violet and silver, met mine. For a moment, time suspended. She did not scream, shout, or recoil. Instead, she regarded me with an expression that was impossible to read. "You aren't aware," she said finally, her voice calm but firm. "Explain." I walked in by accident," I stammered. "The door I didn't see." Her expression softened ever so slightly, though her bioluminescence dimmed, a subtle shift in mood or reaction I could barely interpret. "Human," she said, almost as if issuing a gentle warning. "You have seen something private, something sacred. You must understand that." "I understand," I said quickly. "I promise it was unintentional. I'll leave immediately." She gestured with one fluid arm, and I froze again. "Do not flee. That is not the proper response. You may stay if you can remain composed. Observe respect." I hesitated. My mind raced. Respect. Composure. Alien body. Bioluminescent skin. The room, filled with steam, refracted light, and shadows, felt almost sacred. I realized then that this was an unspoken lesson in trust, vulnerability, and perception. I stepped back, sitting quietly on the edge of a bench, careful to avert my gaze while still being aware. Lyria continued her bathing, the colors of her skin shifting subtly, casting reflections on the walls. There was a rhythm to her movements, a dance of water and light that was hypnotic yet serene. I realized she had adapted a ritual of bathing that combined hygiene with meditation, an ancient Thalrian practice I had read about in cultural reports but never witnessed firsthand. Minutes passed. I learned, without words, how she moved, breathed, and interacted with water in ways no human anatomy could replicate. Each shift in bioluminescence seemed to correspond with thought, mood, or emotion, a language of light I could not fully comprehend. I was both observer and student, witnessing something profoundly intimate without intrusion, guided by her unspoken boundaries. Eventually, she spoke again. "You are human. Your biology is rigid, your perceptions limited. And yet, you do not act in fear or ridicule. That is acceptable." I nodded, swallowing my awe. I am honored to witness this, even by accident. I promise I will not disrespect your privacy again. She regarded me for a long moment, then inclined her head slightly. Good. Let this be a lesson. The unseen aspects of a being are not for judgment, but for understanding. Respect is maintained not by avoidance, but by composure and intention. From that day onward, the dynamic between us shifted subtly, but irrevocably. She no longer seemed distant in the same way. We conversed more openly, and I noticed the smallest gestures of trust, leaving personal items unattended, sharing notes about Thalrian customs, even inviting me to assist in minor rituals. I, in turn, learned to interpret her bioluminescence, understanding subtle emotional cues that had eluded me before. It was a silent dialogue, a communication of light and movement, rhythm and pause. Weeks later, a crisis struck the station. A containment failure in the hydroponics wing threatened both human and alien quarters. The emergency required immediate action, and I found myself relying on lessons learned during that accidental bath observation. I understood patterns of movement, rhythm, and flow, not of water, but of systems and energy, that allowed me to act in sync with Lyria's instincts. Together, we prevented a catastrophe, saving lives and maintaining trust across species. After the incident, she approached me quietly in the observation deck. "You have grown," she said softly, "not merely in skill but in understanding. That day you observed me, it began a process you were unaware of. Observation, respect, and adaptation. You have learned quickly." I smiled, a mix of humility and relief. "I owe it to your guidance. And, perhaps to the accident itself." She tilted her head, a gesture that seemed almost playful. "Sometimes accidents are necessary for growth. Remember that. And remember this. The seen and unseen parts of beings, human or alien, are always connected. Respect the unseen, and you will understand the whole." By the time my assignment ended, I had gained more than just research data or diplomatic experience. I had learned trust, humility, and the profound lesson that intimacy and vulnerability, even accidental, could foster understanding across species. Lyria and I parted as colleagues, friends, and mutual learners, with a quiet acknowledgement of the bond formed in that moment of unintentional exposure. Years later, when recounting my time on Zenthra, I would always mention the day I accidentally saw my alien roommate bathing, not as a moment of embarrassment, but as the beginning of profound insight into life, trust, and the extraordinary nature of beings far beyond my own. Because sometimes, the most transformative lessons arrive unbidden, illuminated by light, shadow, and the courage to observe without judgment.